אני נולדתי ב7/6/42. באותו יום, בחלמנו, נרצחה כל המשפחה של הסבא שלי, 19 נפשות, מברלין. אני נולדתי עם המטען הזה. 25 שנה אחרי זה בדיוק, באותו יום, הנפנו את הדגל. התחושה הייתה, זה סיפור של העם היהודי. זה היו ימים מתוחים ביותר, ימים של חרדה ממש. פתאום התחיל סיפור מירושלים. הייתה לי הרגשה לפתע, אנחנו הולכים להילחם בירושלים את מלחמת חיינו. אני עם הסמג"ד בג'יפ מתחיל לנדנד לו. אני רוצה את המשימה לפרוץ לעיר העתיקה כשנגיע. אני רוצה, תבטיח לי, דבר עם המג"ד, ולא ויתרתי. כי היה לי הרגשה שזה הדבר הכי חשוב שיש לעם היהודי, הרבה יותר מכל סיני. נוסעים לבית הכרם, יורדים למקלט של משפחת כהן, סבתא נרגשת. הנה בחורים, הבאתי לכם דגל. ותגיעו בשלום ותניפו את הדגל הזה על הכותל המערבי בירושלים, ממש... התרגשות החלה לקראת הפריצה לשער האריות. עוד צעד ועוד צעד, זה כיפת הסלע, זה המקום הכי חשוב, זה הגדוד הכי טוב של הלגיון. אז שני הזחלמים חסמנו את ויה דולרוזה, אנחנו פונים שמאלה, ואנחנו ממשיכים לטהר את הרחבה, ואני עם הדגל. מצאנו ערבי, זקן, הוא אומר, אני 19 שנה, אני ידעתי, אתם תבואו. פתחנו את שער המוגרבים. אנחנו יוצאים אולי 7-8 חיילים. אני עם הדגל פה. למטה רחבת הכותל הקטנה, ריקה, שקטה, מוצלת, כמו שזכרתי אותה. אמרתי לעצמי, הם שמעו את זה, החבר'ה, אמרתי את זה בקול. כותל, שבנו אליך.
March. This year, March 2020.
אני הייתי בכותל עם אבא שלי ב-47. אחרי עוצר בירושלים. גם זכרתי את הרגשת הילד קטן, אבל עוול עצום. איך לא נותנים לנו? זה שלנו. התחברות עמוקה לילדות, באמת. הייתה תחושה ברורה מאוד, פיזית, של כיסופי הדורות. מרגישים אותם. אנחנו חוזרים חזרה לתוך שער המוגרבים לחפש את הסבכה הזאת. אנחנו מניפים את הדגל על גג של כותל, למעלה ראינו את הסבכה הזאת מלמטה.
This is on YouTube.
אנחנו מניפים את הדגל, אנחנו שרים התקווה. רגע ראשון שפתאום כל אחד רגע לעצמו, ואני הייתי לגמרי עם דמעות. אמרתי לו, לא התקווה, שיר המעלות. ושוב, אדוני, את שיבת ציון, היינו כחולמים, אז ימלא שחוק פינו לשנינו, הנה, אז יאמרו בגויים, הגדיל אדוני לעשות עם אלה. הגדיל אדוני לעשות עמנו. שובה אדוני את שיביתנו, כאפיקים בנגב. הלוך, ילך ובכו, נושא משך הזרע. זה מהלך החיים שלנו. כל אחד. אבל בו יבוא ברינה, נושא לו מוטב, זה הרגע הזה.
Shabbat Shalom.
Who was that, Rabbi?
That was a guy, one of the soldiers that was came into the mountain of Temple Mountain. What's his name? You want to know?
Yes.
I think in the beginning he had his name. Let me check.
Okay, it doesn't matter. I thought he might have been one of the generals or something.
He was one of the soldiers. Yeah. I would like also to show just another few more minutes to get the taste of Jerusalem. Another video about modern Jerusalem, to see the Jerusalem of today. And of course, the reason why we are talking about Jerusalem is because that this coming Monday, it's Yom Yerushalayim. It's the day that we liberated Jerusalem from the Jordans, and I would like to share with you a short video on that. 1 second. Let me do that. Okay. Second. There's 10 movements in the world, 9 of them. Special. Okay, so we got a little bit of a taste of the New Jerusalem to see how Israel is growing and becoming bigger and bigger. Oh Hashem, and this is a miracle, and we have to. My great grandfather passed away just the day before Yom Yerushalayim, and I remember he was waiting to his last breath. He's saying, exactly when they came, and did they come already? Did they come to Jerusalem? The moment he heard that they conquered Jerusalem, he passed away, and it was a very, very powerful moment for all of the Jews, because until then, as you know, not all of Israel was conquered, and it took them time until they came in and did the Yerushalayim Hashlema. So on the 6-day war, of course, you know the Sheshet Hayamim. They conquered many. They took back many land in Sinai. Basically, it was many types of miracles and different types of miracles that happened to the Jewish people in that time. So we're going to remember that, and we say that actually in our prayers all the time. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim shel zahav. We talk about Jerusalem all the time, because Jerusalem, there's two levels. There's a spiritual level and there's a physical level, and it says that every good deed that we do, we're putting a stone. We're building the stone in the Jerusalem of heaven. So that is we're all part of that. We're all part of building the Jerusalem by being kind, by doing good deeds. We are bringing back the true Jerusalem back where it's supposed to be, the true kingdom, our kingdom, our city of gold. So Bezat Hashem, I would like to all welcome all of the people that are here with us, and we would like to start in our regular routine, which is to memorize and to give a memorial prayer for those that passed away, for all those that are in our families that has passed away through the coming week. We're going to say a special memorial prayer, and then we are going to hear Aviva Wilfred, our lady warden in our community, to say a few words about her mother. And then we're going to have, later on, we're going to say we're going to do a Kabbalat Shabbat, and then we're going to have a special talk by the most famous, well-known speaker, Jeremy Stern. I don't see if he's here yet, but he will probably be in soon. So, without further ado, let's start with the memorial prayer. If I did not say any name, please do not hesitate to tell me and to speak out about a name that I need to say. Okay. אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, אלוה סליחות חנון ורחום מלך אפיים רב חסד, אמצא כפרת פשע הקרבת ישע מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, מעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הקים מזהירים את נשמות נתן בן אברהם, Father Merlin Goldstein, the father of Roland Rosen, Miriam Bat Yaakov, mother of Brian Franks, Gertner Hirsch, the father of Peter Hirsch, Tavia Ben Yankel, the father of Stuart Sherman, Aaron Ben Yitzchak Nachum, the father of Mark Tendler, Mindel Bat Avam Zelig, mother of Sharon and Aviva Wilford, Rivka Chana Bat Baruch Halevi, the mother of Henry Goldstein, Devorah Bat Yosef, the mother of Jerome Harwood, Yehudit Bat Yaakov, the sister of Betty Blihan, Baruch Ben Yitzchak, friend of Philip Weinberg. Asher alchu לעולמם, הנאה בלחמים זכה להם לטובה כל זכויותיהם, בצדקותיהם בארצות החיים. הובטח להם שרי צדק והוראה, שרי חמלה וחנינה. בסתר כנפיך תסתירו לעולמים, וצרור בצוע חיים לנשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, ינוח בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר אמן. Now we're going to say the Kaddish in English for those that passed away. If anyone wants to practice it, let me know. Yes, Aviva. Okay. Magnificent and sanctified may his great name be in his world. Would he like to? Okay, you don't have to. Magnificent and sanctified may his great name be in his world he created by his will. May he establish his kingdom in your lifetime and in your days, in the lifetime of all the house of Israel, swiftly and soon. May his great name be blessed forever at all times. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted. Raised and honored, uplifted and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he, beyond any blessing, song, praise, and consolation uttered in the world. May there be great peace from heaven and for us, and life for us and all of Israel. And let us sing together. Hoseh shalom b'momar, u'yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'yimeru imhu amen. Aviva, if you please, could you unmute yourself? Yes.
When family want to join, please do.
Yes, please. Please all stay standing up. Okay.
Leon Dimar Difrach Urte, Biamlich Malchute, Bachayechon, and Machabechon, Bachai Tachai, Tachai Lachol Beit Israel, Ba'agalabis Mankarev Bimaru, Amen. Yeheshme Rabba, Leolam, Ulam Leo, Almaya, Yibarach, Bishbach, Bitwa, Bitman, Bitnase, Bitadavi, Talal, Shmedi Kudisho, Berechu, Le'elom Min Kol Bichata, Bishirata, Shushbachata, Benechamata, Diamiran. Biamla, Biamru, Amen. Tutkabel, Zlot, Chon, Uvot, Chon, Di, Chol, Yisrael, Kad, Abdam, Abo, Chon, Di, Vishmaya, Biamru, Amen. Yehei Shalom, Rabba, Min Shemaya, B'chaim Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, Biamru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, B'mama, Yaseh Shalom. Amen.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Aviva.
Okay, so I'm just going to say a few words about my mother, who those of you who are regular shul goers will obviously remember. My mother died in 2016. I can't believe it's all those years have disappeared. And actually she, you know, if you look back, she had a pretty hard life, but you'd never have known it. I'm sure all of you will, the thing you'll remember about her, if I said to you, what do you remember about my mother? You would say her smile. She had the most incredible smile, and she smiled through absolutely everything. So she was born to, she was the second child. She had an older brother of Queenie and Aubrey Brown, and they lived in oh, it's gone right out of my head where they lived, near South, Palmer's Green. And as the two of them were absolute stalwarts of Palmer's Green Shul, my grandfather was on the board of management, and he taught in the Cheder, and my grandmother had a complete open house for anybody who wanted to come. There was a huge uptake of the community who absolutely loved both of them. They both came from very learned families. My grandmother's father was a rabbi. He was a rabbi, he was a shochet, he was an absolute everything. And he had been sent from Russia to the Portsmouth community here in England. He came with 4 children and then had another 3 children. Yeah, 7 of them. And very sadly, he died very young. My grandmother was the youngest of all those children. So they formed this amazing relationship in Palmer's Green. My grandfather was a furrier. My father's mother was a furrier. And during the family had been, his family had been furriers, so he bought when his father came also from Russia, he came with his furrier business. And during the war, they went to Southport. And he took his business to Southport, and they were evacuated to Southport, where again they became absolute stalwarts of Southgate community. Very sadly, after the war, my grandfather became ill with cancer. He'd had a heart attack while they were in Portsmouth, and he died when my mother was 16. She wanted to be a radiologist. But unfortunately, as my grandfather had died and there was the usual Jewish business with his business, with other members of his family, my mother had to go out to work, as did her brother, who wanted to have a completely different career. So she became a secretary, and she was a really very fine secretary. And my uncle had to become an accountant, which he absolutely hated all of his life. In Palmer's Green lived the Winston family, Robert Winston's mother, and were very friendly with my grandmother. Between the two of them, they started Emuna in Palmer's Green. When my grandmother moved to Wembley, she brought Emuna with her. She was the Emuna Queen of Wembley. Ruth Winston was a first cousin of my father's mother, and introduced my mother, age 17, to my father, who was at then age 26. They had to get special permission to get married when my mother was just over 18. And they married, and they came to live in Wembley. And she married Joseph Roth, and they had a really wonderfully happy marriage. And David and I were very fortunate. We were brought up in a very, very happy household. And my mother was absolutely devoted to us both. Sometimes I thought she was slightly more devoted to David than she was to me.
Never.
But we all had plenty of love and encouragement. And she was soft, and she was approachable, and she was the most gorgeous, gorgeous character. And we always had entertained for all the Yom Tovim, Shabbos lunches, absolutely wonderful home to be brought up in, very warm, very Jewish. David and I were very, very well educated, and honestly, especially through this lockdown period, I am really grateful to both my mother and my father particularly for the Jewish education that they gave us, and the wealth of knowledge that we both have that we can now pass on to our children, or we have passed on to our children, and they pass on hopefully to their children. And so very, very sadly, when my mother she was about 55, she was absolutely struck down with arthritis, terrible, terrible arthritis. She used to crawl up and down the stairs at home, but never complained, never moaned, never groaned, always that smile on her face, absolutely incredible. And eventually she had 2 knee replacements, and my parents moved to join David and his family, who lived in Pinner, and me living in Northwood with my family. And we had lovely years with them close by. Particularly for me, we shared Shabbos. I used to sit next to my mother in shul every Shabbos. And then tragically, again, age 71, she was struck down with the most debilitating stroke that you can ever imagine. For 11.5 years, she was cared for in the Princess Alexandra home, which is now the new Jewish care home. And that really promoted, with my father particularly, and David and I, a great love and support for Jewish care. And we have donated the new shul, which will be at the Anita Dorfman and that whole complex, and the parochet for the Ark, in memory of our parents, which we think is a very fitting tribute to both of them. And so 6 years ago, Mummy died, and it doesn't seem, a day longer than yesterday at times. And I know that my family who are listening to this will have their own really, really special memories, particularly for the grandchildren, of her cooking. Her cooking was incredible. And whenever we went for any meal, whether it was a lunch or a dinner or a Shabbos or a Yontov, always all their favorites came out on the table. It was incredible. So, and the one thing that John always said about my mother was that, you know, if you stepped up on her doorstep at any time of the day or night, she would have opened the door, absolutely welcoming you in as if it was the best thing that had happened to her in that day. So that's the memory I'd like to keep.
Thank you so much, Aviva. Wow, amazing. Thank you very, very much. And I wish you long life. Bezrat Hashem, her memory is remembered by you and by all the family and by the beautiful actions that you're doing on her name. And this is exactly what the whole idea about talking and about saying good words in this world is, in order for us to learn from her and for them to our legacy, because the moment we do good actions on her name, her neshama goes higher in heaven. And I'm sure she's looking up there, smiling and continuing to smile, and very proud of you and all the family. So I wish you all a long life.
Thank you.
We're now going to continue with Kabbalat Shabbat, and I do not see here Jeremy yet. If you want to get hold of Jeremy, someone, and then we'll go after that. Please stay with us. Enjoy the singing, enjoy the motions, and let's bring in the Shabbat. Let's bring in the holy day with the songs and happiness. You can find it in the page. Maybe I'll share the page. You all have a siddur. Does everyone not have a siddur? So, does any one of you do not have a siddur? Okay, so I'm going to share it online. One moment. Let's do it. Di nefesh avarachama meshoch avdecha el retzonecha yarutz avdecha kimo avayal yishtachave el munadach ירב לו ידידותיך מנופת צוף וכל טעם אדוני זיו העולם נפשי חולת אהבתך אנא Efana wala be'arot la noam zivach as titchazek v'tiyitrape ve'ayta la shivchat olam v'tik emuna achamecha וחוסנה על בין אהובך כי זה כמה נחשפתי לראות בתפארת עוזך לך עמדה ליבי וחוסנה ואל תתעלם יגאלנה פוס חביבי עלי סוכת שלומך תאיר ארץ וכבודך נגילה תשמחה בך מהר היום קיווה מועד בכוננו כי ימי עולם. ליי 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 Did it I lie 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 did it I lie 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 did it I lie 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 did it I lie 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 la 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 did it I lie 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 did it I lie 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 did it I lie 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 did it I lie 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 did it I lie 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 La 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 lo, did I la 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 la, did I la la la, did I la la la, did I la 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 la, did I la la la, did I la la la, did I la 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 la. לכו נרנן על אדוני, נריע לצור אישנו. ארבעים שנה אקוד בדור, ואומר עמתו אל לבבם, והם נדעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי באפי, עברו למנוחתי. Sorry that I'm not going to sing so much. We're going to read it today because my voice is not so
Rabbi,
please help me then, Brian. Please help me.
Shiru Ladonai, Shiru
Ladonai, Kol haaretz, Shiru Ladonai,
Baruch Hu Rama Bisru Amayim
Yeshuato,
Apru Bagayim Kavoida Ochol Yamim Nefala Savayaya Adonai Amahalam
Yod,
Narachu Al Kol Elohim Ay Kikol Elohim Am
Adonai Shamayim Asa, Od Yadav, בתפארת למקדשו, אדוני משפך, אביב עבור אדוני, יעוז, עבור אדוני, יעבור שמו, ציון מן העם,
יבוא להצ'סו, ישתחוו
לאדוני,
Banos Kodesh Ilpatam Kol Haaretz Vibro
בגויים, וימלך, ותגרום תבל בועתיבו, ידי אביב ובשרים, די די
ויספרו השמיים וסגי
הארץ, ירם וירמו לו, לא היה יד ושדי וכל אשר בו, אז יעננו כל הצילה לפני אדוני, כי יבער
הארץ ישפוט התבל בעת צדק ויעמים באמונות. איי איי איי
אוהבי אדוני סינורה, שומר נפשות חסידיו, מיד רשעים יצילם. עוזרו על הצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה, שמחו צדיקים באדוני והודו לזכר קודשו, מזמור שלנו אישי חדש. ים הים ומלוא תבל ויושבבה, נהרות ימחאו כף ירד הרים ירננו, לפני אדוני כי בהר לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, ואביב במישרים, אדוני מלך. ועמוד הענן ידבר עליהם, שמרו עדותיו וחוק נתן לעמו. אדוני אלוהינו אתה ניצב, נושא היית להם ונוקם עלילותם. אומרו אדוני אלוהינו ישבו להר קודשו, כי קדוש אלוהינו או לדוד. עבור לאדוני מנהלים, עבור לאדוני כבוד העוז, עבור לאדוני כבוד שמו, עבור לאדוני ביד הרש, על המים, כל עירים, אדוני על מים, כל אדוני כל אדוני שובר ארזים, וישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון, וסריון כמו ברמים. כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יחיד במדבר, הנה אדוני בקדש, כל אדוני יכול גלות, ויחצו יערות ובחלק כולה עובר כבוד. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני המלך לעולם. אדוני אוזנמו ייתן, אדוני יברך.
ויהי שמה ושלום.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. שמו
דברת להילה, לך דודי
לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכוונך, יהי מכה הברכה, הרש מקדם משוכה.
עכשיו בתחילה.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת
כלה,
פני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך יבכה,
ומצאי מתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בימי קבחה.
והוא ימל עלייך אמלה. לך
דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. ידערים יפרקו בי,
ליד בן ישי בית הלך בי כובע את נפשי גאלה דודי לך דודי לקראת כלה
נשמה לחדדי לקראת
כלה
נשמה נקהלה יסנאורי אורי kiva ore kumi ori ori shidaberi
כבוד אדוני
la nigala
לך דודי לקראת כלה
נשמה
נקבלה
לחדדי לקראת נשמה
נקבלה תרבושי ולא תקמי מה תשלחי ומה תימי בר יחסו אני ימי ולתאיר אל תילה ולתאיר אל תילה לך דודי לקראת קהלה שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת
ונשבת נקבלה
sorry דודי לך דודי לקראת כלה ונשמה נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה ונשמה נקבלה והיו למשיסה שוסייך
רחקו כל מבלייך ניסיס עלייך אלהייך כיסוס השטנה הקהלה לך דודי
לקראת כלה ונשמה נקבלה
לך דודי לקראת
כלה ונשמה נקבלה
ימינו שמעתי תרצי
בית אדוני תריצי על יד איש ופרצי ונשמחה לך דודי לקראת כלה ונשמה נקבלה לך לקראת כלה
ונשמת נקבלה
בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ורינה וצהולה תוך אמונה עם סגולה בואי עלה בואי לך דודי לקראת כלה ונשמה נקבלה
לך דודי לקראת
כלה
נשמת נקבלה
ונשמה נקבלה. Thank you very much, Brian, for helping us over here. And we are here. Finally, we can see our speaker, world famous name, speaker, Jeremy, that is going to give us a Devat Torah. Sorry, not this one. Where are you? Here you are.
Ian.
Okay, Jeremy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, fantastic. So the floor is yours, or the Zoom is yours.
Yep, I want to talk about the Magnificent Seven. No, not the movie with Yul Brynner, but the feature that's in the Sedra this week, which is about the years of Shemitah, where on the seventh year the land lies fallow. And obviously the Israelites in the desert were commanded at Sinai to take the seventh day as a day of rest and to stop all of their work. Having been slaves in Egypt, probably on a 7-day week, they were probably quite up for this, having a day off. That seemed like good. But then came the additional commandment. In the seventh year, the land shall have a complete rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Now, these are people who are in the middle of the desert. They're not farmers at this point. They're surviving hand to mouth, probably on manna and hope. And then God gives them a commandment that says in 6 years, when you get to the promised land, whenever that happens to be, you're going to have to stop farming and survive for a year without your the produce from your land. Now that's an awful lot of hope to be added in. It was a commandment that's a bit of a cheeky one, perhaps, that could only apply when they had reached the promised land. And the Israelites were probably happy to say yes, because it was one of those things that was dangling in the future, a carrot for the future. Please God, they could actually farm and have harvests such that they would be able to stop in that 7th year whenever it came. God wanted them to stop, to pause, to reflect on the journey that they'd been on, and to give that land that they were going to inherit a good rest. Now, my challenge is this was a time before Amazon, before Ocado could deliver the same day, before international trade, before we had a freezer, and before produce could be kept for a long time. There were no canned goods around. So it must have been quite a challenge to prepare and plan, once they were in the land of Israel, for that 7th year, in order to survive and for the families. For non-farmers, it would possibly be okay, but for farmers who didn't have cash but relied on selling their produce, it would have been incredibly hard. But we're Jews. We know about words. We're very good with weasel clauses. And there are a number of ways that the Jews have learned to survive the law of Shemitah and still eat. First of all, the law of Shemitah applies only to land owned by Jews in Israel. It doesn't apply to land in the diaspora. So imported goods are fine to eat here or in Israel. Obviously, international trade in wheat and dates or other produce wasn't that enormous in those ancient times, but it did exist. And there was a lot of communication with Lebanon, with Syria, with Iraq, Iran, etc., from wherever. So food was able, obviously, to come in. But the law also does not apply to any naturally growing produce that was not formally harvested. So if it fell to the ground, it could be eaten by the owners, as well as left for the poor or strangers to take from the land. So that was an opportunity to get food. You might accidentally bump into an apple tree, and whatever fell, you were able to eat. But then in the late 19th century, a controversial exemption came around. The sophisticated Ashkenazis were starting to occupy the land of Palestine in greater numbers. And they were not accustomed to doing without at any time of anything. They had standards, and certainly not decent fruit, veg, and the produce of the land. So, and certainly not for a whole year. So the leading rabbi of the time used a similar construct, a similar exemption to the one that we use at Pesach, where there we sell the chametz. First of all, a temporary transfer to the rabbi, and then the rabbi to a non-Jew. And we don't own it over Pesach, and then lo and behold, at the end of Pesach, we get it back. He allowed the farmers to sell their land for a year to a friendly Arab. But the Jewish family would continue to work on the land as normal. And the local Arab would actually pay the Jewish family either in cash or via the produce that was grown on the land that they farmed, or with cash that the Arab generated from the sale of that produce that was harvested. So quite a clever, neat workaround. However, it was controversial, and future rabbis totally disagreed whether it could be done. And in the 20th century, it didn't happen an awful lot. It didn't seem to be allowed by the Beth Dins. But at least international trade had grown to such an extent it could make up the gap. So the wheat could be imported from abroad. But there's still going to be an income gap for the farmers that were affected. Another escape clause that's been utilized is that the Shemitah applies to produce grown on the land. if you take that literally, rabbis now do not include produce that is grown in greenhouses or hydroponically. So that's on waterbeds, specially constructed and with nutrients being fed into them. And apparently, in the Shemitah year, greenhouses and hydroponic and aquaponic systems are used by many religious Jews to grow their own in their back gardens, I'll come back on the back gardens, to grow their own at home, provided it's grown under a roof, so either indoors or in a greenhouse. So clearly, with Shemitah, with 7 years, there are strong parallels with 7 days and the Sabbath. And the 7 days reminds us of the cycle of creation. And with Joseph, there were 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty. 7 is quite a common word. We're told to refrain on that 7th day and that from all work, allowing us to elevate ourselves in a more spiritual manner once a week. But there's also another aspect to Shemitah, not just the spiritual, but environmental. There is a non-profit charity, a charity in Israel, Hazon, that focuses on the Jewish approach to food and sustainability. And they are delighted with Shemitah. They regard it as a wonderful environmental benefit, a series of obscure ancient concepts about how we relate to the land that actually does the work of nature and provides us with an environmental center spot for us to consider and to make us and our land more sustainable. And they believe Shemitah at its core reflects a Jewish sense of ethics and a moral compass that makes us look at our food and how we sustain ourselves as a larger community. Well, that's their view. I'm not entirely with it, but I certainly think it doesn't help us to take things a bit less for granted. And the irony is that now, at the moment, we've all had a sort of a Shemitah year. We've been banned from harvest the fruits of our own labors, our financial labors, our work. We've had no fancy meals out. We've had no lovely holidays. We've had no fancy celebrations. We've had no parties. Our routine has been disturbed, upset, changed for 12 months, 14 months now. And although there's been a rise in isolation and mental health issues, for those of us still okay, which I hope includes all of us on this call, we have probably all felt a huge appreciation for the things that we took for granted, for going to the shops, for having a pint in a pub, a meal in a restaurant, that for us was so normal, but for the last 12 months have been completely alien. And how many of us have had a chuckle when we've actually gone to the shops and bought something we haven't bought, or had a meal in a restaurant and felt that, oh, it's so special. And I think that's possibly, that is definitely the meaning behind Shemitah, that we don't take things for granted. Maybe another proof that absence makes the heart grow fonder. So that is the beauty of Shemitah, appreciation for what we have, the cycle of 7, and a link with our special Shabbat day. And that in the 7th year, we allow things to lie fallow, and it keeps us grounded and not getting stuck into Groundhog Day. Shabbat Shalom.
Superb. Shabbat Shalom. Wow.
Ryan, you're on mute. I want to hear the applause.
Brilliant, as always, Jeremy. Very good.
Fantastic.
We will also be filling the 9:50 spot in July, so that already gives you advance notice.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Very, very. Any questions from the audience to Jeremy? He looks like he's up there for a nice.
Yeah, Rabbi, what's your view on the hydroponics, on growing off the land?
So I would just want to mention. You said the Haredim are put using the vegetables in these whatever you want to call it. How do you call it?
Plant troughs.
Plant troughs. Okay, so they use it. The main use is not for the Shemitah. The main use is for bugs. They lots every veg. If you go to a Haredi, if you want a Haredi, but like a religious supermarket in Israel, all the vegetables, well, not good for the environment, but all the vegetables have these bags on it, and it says it's like we are, covered with bags, and it says Naki mecharakim. It's clean from bugs. Now, how do they make it clean from bugs? They don't spray anything, or maybe they do, not too much. But the idea is that they don't put it in the ground. They
grow it in a safe environment.
And more than a safe, they put it. It's not on the. It's like on. How do you say it, Brian?
Shells.
Insect free.
No, insect free, but they do it above the ground. So
yeah,
it's like,
they do it on shelves.
And shelves, exactly. And it's already. It started from Gush Katif, from the next to Gaza over there. They used to do it, and then they moved it on. So we're used to it. Nothing to do with Shemitah, but at Shemitah it could help because it's not from the ground. It's fantastic. See, I am, as a rabbi, I'm very in favor of finding ways around the rules. Meaning, heter mechira, it's not that it's a way around. God gave us rules, and he also gave us ways around the rules in order for us to use it when we need to. So when we have a necessity to go around the rules, then we use this, back door. And just one more point about the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim. The Sephardi Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, was very pro using this technique called heter mechira, basically selling and buying like we do the chametz. And the Ashkenazi Rabbi, the Chazon Ish, was very, very against it. But what's the trick over here? Because he used it once. He used it in the first year when they established Israel in 1948, 1949. On that year, because there was a starvation, people didn't have nothing to eat. So he used that card. But, especially Ashkenazim, they don't like to use backdoor cards. They like to be more strict. But the rabbi said that you're using the card, you can use it whenever you want. You can use it every 7 years. But they did it. They did it once, and just when they came and they established in Israel, they used that card of selling and buying and all that. But it's a fascinating talk, Jeremy. Yasher koyach, and looking forward again to your next talk. Chazak u'baruch. I hope you have a beautiful Shabbat. Thank you, Aviva. Thank you all for participating today, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at Shul or in the next week, hopefully when we are opening up a lid. Yes, Shamash.
Sunday at o'clock Sunday.
Bezat Hashem, we'll get a minyan. Bezat Hashem. Monday also we have Yom Yerushalayim, so we'll do a minyan in the morning, and we'll also celebrate it without Tachanun on Monday morning.
And Jack Solomon kicks off the 9:50 spot that the Rabbi has now introduced for every Shabbos before we start the service at 10.
Voila.
His favorite Jewish personality. Shabbat Shalom.
And we have a special Kabbalat Shabbat next week for Shavuot with a guest appearance of Chava Wulik talking about Megillat Ruth.
Shkoyach.
Good. Alan, how are you doing? I didn't hear you. All good?
Fine, Rabbi.